Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin. Today joined by, and always joined on Thursdays by, your boy Aaron, wearing Celtics green. It's the weirdest thing that he regularly does. Is this? I thought you guys were protesting.
Protesting what?
He's wearing an A's hat. For those of you listening, and I thought A's fans were protesting the team because they've been trying to mooch off the city forever, and then
Yeah.
now are trying to mooch off of a different city.
Yes. The A's also got a perfect game thrown against them last night. So, and
Yeah.
I love the Kelly Green A's merch. So I've decided I'm not an A's fan. I'm an Oakland A's fan. So they're still in Oakland. So I'll support.
Mhm.
Plus, I need a haircut.
I
My hair grows too damn
the color
fast.
green, man. Like it's
You know
just
what's funny is I actually I wore this hat to the facility
mhm.
um, to practice once and got I won't say who pulled me
Rightfully.
aside, but I got pulled aside. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, what? Your hat? I'm like, I can't wear a hat. It didn't even occur to me
Yep.
because it very clearly says A's on it. It very
You wear it
clearly,
backwards.
yeah, but it also has a MLB logo on the front of, I mean,
It's
on the
really
back of it.
small.
Yeah,
The
okay.
the the thing that people notice is going to be the color green. It's just like Jalen Hood Shafino rocking the green suit. It's just like you
That was
can't
more
do
of
that,
yeah,
man.
yeah. And the
You
Celtics
can't
do
do
wear
it.
that darker color now. That kind of like darker emerald. Great suit, by the way.
No, it wasn't. It
Yeah,
was
it
the
was.
wrong
It was great.
color. It was a
No, yeah.
terrible color. I
This is
hate
the
the color
extent.
green.
Go ahead.
I hate the color green so much. I have hazel eyes, and I like to say that um, like my body fought the color green so hard that it was like we're gonna compromise on brown and green.
Fair. I hate the color red because of the Stanford Cardinal. So I
Okay,
don't. Yeah, I don't really wear any. I don't think I have any red clothing. I don't wear red.
yeah. Um, all right, so it
And by the way, that
is.
will be the extent of my contribution to this podcast. I poured myself the largest unnamed cognac pure white that has ever been poured,
Yeah.
and I will just sit here and mute my mic from now on. Go ahead. What are you talking about on the show today on this fine Thursday, Anthony?
So yesterday's news cycle was about Bruce Brown. And while obviously you can't get into the specifics as it pertains to a specific player,
Hmm.
I do think it's worth talking about what the Lakers would have had to do, what they would have to do to be able to use the non taxpayer mid level exception that they were going to use reportedly on Bruce Brown. Now, Mark Stein did throw some cold water on Brown specifically. Um, and, it always felt like more of a leverage play from Brown to try to get some team to pay him more than the non taxpayer. But regardless, I do want to talk about the paths forward here where, they could go with essentially what they've told us all along they were going to do, which is some version of running it back, keeping their powder dry as they get into the season, as they head into the season, and
Hmm.
then kind of tweaking the roster at the deadline or in the months leading up to the deadline as need be, or they can renounce the rights to Mo Bamba and not pick up, or I guess not guarantee Mo Bamba's contract,
No, you
and
have to
then,
to non-guarantee
um,
him. You have to renounce his rights. You have
all
that
right,
correct.
so that verbiage, and then with Malik Beasley, they could not pick up his team option to get them closer to the apron, which is like
No, no,
170.
no, no. So you would have to. It doesn't get you close to the apron. You would have to do that to get under the cap. In which case, then you would have the non-taxpayer mid-level. Um, there's some other little machinations
Not
of
the
it, but
not the
that
cap though, right? The tax apron.
no, because then you don't have the there's two mid-level exceptions.
Right.
There's the taxpayer mid-level exception, which is over the
5 million.
They would have to be under the tax. Correct. They would have to be under.
Yeah.
Yes, to have the non-taxpayer. Yes, the full
Yeah,
mid-level.
because you're talking
exception,
about
the
cap
12.
space, and I'm talking about space under the, because the
There
non-taxpayer
is theoretically a path forward with cap space also, but
that takes
that's a different
even
discussion.
more
Yeah,
massaging.
that's a different discussion. So the one thing I do want to point out though, and because today is the deadline day for those two decisions, is the difference in, and you and I have talked about this offline, the difference between the non-guarantee and the team option. It seems very similar, but it is not. A non-guarantee is treated like he has a contract. So to put this simply, in the kind of the CBA for dummies portion of this is, because I know this is kind of minutia that's difficult. The CBA treats Mo Bamba as though he has a contract until the Lakers decide theoretically to not guarantee it, which would then they would have to renounce his rights, which does not give you bird rights. The bird rights end with that. The difference with Malik is that he is treated as though he doesn't have a contract right now until the team picks it up. So the team would have to do something to pick it up. Otherwise, it just if you don't hear anything, it's that the team option is not picked up. The difference though is you do not have to renounce his rights. He just becomes a free agent, and he could come back.
And they have their
using
bird
rights. You could sign him to whatever contract you want with his bird rights. If the non-guarantee for Mo, if Mo is non-guaranteed, he is then
renounced.
You renounced his rights, and then
you don't have bird rights.
You do not have. So then, for him to come back, you would have to use an exception.
So
I've barely slept, which is why I was like, yeah, there's a path to cap space. You got to get under the cap. That's a different path. But yes, to have the non-taxpayer mid-level, you can be over the cap. You just cannot be over the apron. The difference, though, the problem though becomes if you use, and the Lakers would have the biannual exception also. The difference though is if you use either one of those, the non-taxpayer mid-level, or yes, then you are hard capped.
Yeah, and
those are the two triggers, and receiving a player in sign and trade. Those are the triggers for the hard cap. Shout out.
That was where I stubbed my toe on the whole Bruce Brown notion. I am not interested in the Lakers being hard capped, seeing as I think one of this year's bigger market inefficiencies is going to be confidently spending. Right? We even saw, we saw Steve Ballmer turn down, show Eric Gordon the door after they traded Luke Kennard, after they pick swapped and gave up 10 pick slots in the first round of this year's draft.
Everybody, we saw the Warriors dump Jordan Poole. Everybody is shook by it. And those two teams, the Clippers and the Warriors, is who this rule is designed for. Yeah, and those two are shook. So
and so like the reason I would rather not hard cap myself. Now those teams are shedding salaries to get under the second apron. They are above the second apron, and they are trying to get under it at some point in the next couple of years.
They're trying to get under it for next year specifically. Yeah.
The Lakers,
they can't get under. Right, go ahead. Sorry.
The Lakers are under the second apron right now, and I think they can get close enough to it where they get the benefits of spending. Right, you increase your margins the more that you spend in a salary cap sport, and not have to worry as much about the stuff that like the Clippers and the Warriors are freaking out about. Right, and I think that's
and the Celtics.
That I think is the sweet spot. I think
and the Celtics and Denver's freaking out about it also.
Yeah.
But yes, continue. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What else do you want to talk about? That's it. All right.
No. I do think so. What we're gonna try to liven up a little bit, because it does get kind of dry the more that you talk about like numbers and exceptions and all of that stuff. But without getting too far into the weeds, I think that the two paths ahead here, whether it's for Brown or whomever, the path that would arrive at being able to use the non-taxpayer exception and the biannual, but hard capping yourself. I want to talk about like what that would look like personnel wise here for the Lakers. And then I also want to present, and essentially like those of you who subscribe on Substack, this is essentially what I wrote last night for it, regarding like the Lakers options here. But what it would look like and the upsides and downsides of um, not pursuing a Bruce Brown or that type of free agent, utilizing the mini mid level and carrying forward that way. I also think it's interesting. Before we even get into that, we just saw Jordan Clarkson pick up his player option. We saw Gary Trent Jr. do the same. We've seen Josh Hart push back his option decision date. I think we're probably going to see, unless we just don't get news about it today, by the time you guys are listening about it to this, and I'm just going to throw this up as soon as we're done recording.
So one
still
thing
waiting.
about the Hart thing, though, that is to give. That's not one of these like decision that was pushed back. So to push it back, both sides have to agree.
Yeah.
And that is because he's trying to give the Knicks some flexibility to do something, and then
bring it back on bird rights,
and then get it, and then or do an extension. Maybe he picks it up and they do an extension. But he's trying to see what the Knicks can do with it if he doesn't pick it up, and that has to happen from both sides. To amend the contract, both sides, to amend that date, the option date or the guarantee date, both parties have to agree to amend the contract. So when you see that, they're kind of working, they're working together, by the way.
And so, yeah, I do want to come back to like players who have picked up their options, because historically speaking, under the previous CBA, most players of like Jordan Clarkson's type, Gary Trent Jr., they turned down that option for more long-term money, typically. This like the number of people, the percentage of players who are turning or are actually exercising their player options, again, really strikes me as, kind of tells me that the free agent market this year, teams, we've already seen teams are reluctant to trade. They're scared to trade like role players, right? And utilize draft picks because those draft picks are cost controlled. We've seen salary dumps for teams trying to get underneath that second apron or avoid that second apron moving forward. We've seen all these cost cutting stuff, and you combine that with players picking up their options, and it makes me really think that this the cap space and the amount of money that's going to be spent, or just the free agent market in general, is going to be pretty dry this summer.
Yes. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. I mean, well, here's the thing. I think it's twofold. Yes. I think, well, sort of, because I think it is starting to have the intended effect for what the NBA at least claims to have wanted, right? They're trying to close the spending gap. I think that's what it is. I mean, because it's not just the reported part is all the teams that spend too much, or not spend too much, but spend like just exorbitantly and just don't care about the tax. The Warriors and the Clippers, basically.
Now the Suns.
They're trying, and the Suns, they're trying to rein those teams in. But what the underreported part of it is, they are also forcing the teams that were just hoarding cap space to spend more. So I think it's,
and now Michael Jordan is selling.
Right, I'm out, and changing the tax.
You want me to do what?
They're changing the tax payments too, or the the distribution from the tax teams to the non-tax teams. Yeah. So I think it is. So at the top, yes, I think it's going to be more dry, but at the bottom, you are going to get teams that are going to throw exorbitant amounts of money, like overpay people just because they have to, right?
Yeah.
You have to get up to the salary floor. So I think you're going to see shorter deals for higher dollar amounts, just because teams, they don't want to tie up their money long term. But if you're going to have to do it, right? If you're trying to pry an unrestricted free agent, and even maybe a restricted free agent, away from the incumbent team, you're going to have to way overpay, and you may as well, because you're going to have to spend the money somewhere. So I think you're going to see shorter term deals for larger sums of money. The rumors about Houston, let's say. I was gonna say something, but like, I don't know if you saw today the rumors about Houston having something in place with a couple guys. So if you look at that at its face, you say those
That
do
was
one
you
specifically.
can't say their names. I can. Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks. It has reached a point, according to Mark Stein, that it would surprise teams around the league if they didn't sign there. No tampering going on though. None whatsoever.
No, of course not. No, of course not. So, like for the shorter of those guys, it on its face looks like a huge overpay.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what it's going to take to get him away from his incumbent team, and it's only for 2 years. So, and what are they going to do otherwise, right? You may as well. You have to spend the money. It looks like they're not going to be reuniting with a former love. It looks like Houston will not be reuniting with a former love that they have. They're not getting back with their ex. It would not appear. So I think that's part of it. Yes, I do think
Stein also for those who who somehow didn't get the joke. James Harden, according to Mark Stein, is expected to re-sign in Philadelphia, and Kyrie Irving, on that note, also is expected to re-sign in Dallas.
So
that's not tampering. That those guys can have something in place with their current team.
So, yeah. So I do think that that's my one caveat to free agency is going to be dry. It is going to be dry in some cases, but there is going to be the lower spending teams or the teams with cap space are going to be forced to spend it. So I do think that can lead to some overpays, like purposefully, right? Yeah, I mean,
I think that's what Bruce Brown is banking on.
He's still on our roster, right? So I can talk about him. But if a big offer from Austin comes from somewhere, my expectation is San Antonio, right? Because they have a bunch of cap space and and he fits a need there also. Yeah. But they're going to have to spend it. So it makes sense to throw, if you're way under the salary floor, it makes sense to throw huge offers out to restricted free agents because you have to spend the money anyway. And even if it's an overpay, that may be the only way you can.
It's like James Harden isn't going to sign in San Antonio.
No.
Right? Like they don't have access to that kind of free agent.
No, Draymond Green is not going back to Detroit, right? That's not how this works. So a good example of it is Indiana last year with Ayton. Is he worth the max? No. But if they're going to have any chance to get him, if you actually like the player and you're going to have a chance to get him, you're going to have to pay more. So, and then Phoenix ends up matching. If Phoenix matches, okay, fine. You cause them a little bit of pain, right? They paid more than they want to. So I do think the lower spending teams will have some movement in free agency. It won't be that dry. But towards the top, yes, it's going to be dry. The other part, though, the reason why this free agency is going to seem dry is because the free agent class just isn't particularly exciting.
Yeah, there's also that.
Yeah. So I think those are the two reasons. I gave a very long answer for one of the reasons and a very short answer for the other. But those are the two reasons.
These guys.
The class itself is kind of dry.
So on the Austin part of it too, while we're just kind of talking about San Antonio in particular, they have the cap space to actually pay Austin more than the $12 million he's slated to get. They can smooth out the poison pill if they choose to do that. Whereas the lake, yeah, they can. I thought they had to have
no, they cannot. The way that it works is whatever he is paid, right? He can only be paid like 12 million and 12 whatever in the first 2 seasons, whether that's with the Lakers or any other team. And then it can balloon up to 30 something and 30 something in years 3 and 4. What though the team that is signing him to that offer sheet, San Antonio in this case, has to have the cap space available this year for the entirety. They have to have the average cap space of whatever. So to make the math easy, it's like, say it was 4 for 100. That's more than Austin can get. But let's say it's 4 for 100. San Antonio would have to have 25 million in cap space right now to sign him to that offer,
which they do,
even though it can only be 12, 30, and 30. What you're thinking of is the incumbent team, the Lakers in this case. The Lakers have to have the same cap space available, the 25 million, if they were to smooth it. So the Lakers will not have the option to smooth it. It will be
You're
12, 12, 30, 30, or whatever the terms he agrees to. The Lakers will be forced into those terms because they do not have the cap space,
which I think they're fine with for the most part. I mean,
that brings up a LeBron question, an AD question, right?
Yeah, but like and
the new TV money is coming in a couple years, so the cap will go up wildly again. I don't know about wildly, but the cap will go up heavily again.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, right. So my point, what I'm saying is that like while the Lakers have LeBron and AD, I would imagine for the next season or two, Austin will be on a very reasonable number, and then when those guys are gone, if those guys are gone, and the salary bumps up, Austin will, I think, once again be at a pretty reasonable number. I think $30 million for a starting.
To be fair, I don't think he's going to get that. I don't think anybody's going to offer him that. But
even if it does, well, like that's why. So the reason I say all of that is because like Mark Stein wrote that it was, he had a source tell him that it was an automatic match, even if it's the max. And I'm saying, this is why. Like this is why it's an automatic match is because like. It's a reasonable number for the 2 seasons while you need to keep your costs down a little bit because you're employing LeBron and AD. And then potentially after you're employing LeBron and AD, that number jumps up, at which point you're going to have to hit that salary floor anyway. And by the way, Austin Reeves is a starting point guard, shooting guard in his prime, and 30-ish million for that type of player sounds about right.
So I think the more important thing to do is not think of, and this is what happens. This is what teams do. Like the raw number doesn't matter. What teams do is think of it in terms of percentage of the cap.
Percentage.
So like 30 million now is not 30 million 3 years from now, right? So I think it's more important to think of it as a percentage of the salary cap as opposed to 30 or 40 because right, like Michael Jordan made $30 million in a season and it was absurd, right? And there wasn't a salary cap then, so you could just pay dudes whatever there wasn't a maximum salary then, so you could just pay dudes whatever you want. And then nobody got that again for a while, and now like $30 million, right? Now $30 million is just kind of like, all right, that's a lot of money, but like good players get $30 million. So I think percentage of the cap is what's meaningful.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing. I would add to that like comparable salaries and comparable players is also a thing that I look at, and starting caliber guards, whether it's a shooting guard or a point guard, make that number at least. I would say, unless they're on like a rookie scale contract in which like or they're restricted free agents or whatever, and that's a whole different thing altogether. But anyway. Back to the main point here, and I'm keeping an eye, by the way, like if you guys are watching and you see my eyes kind of darting one way or the other, it's because I have my phone down here and it is peak notification season.
Yeah. So, do you have the right ones, notifications on the right ones? Or are you gonna get had?
I have been had already, but that's because somebody was impersonating Tim Reynolds of. Which is like if you're gonna do it and you're gonna get people, that's how you're gonna get people. Because I have Woj, I have Shams, I have Haynes, and I have Stein. Those are the 4 accounts that I get notifications for. Okay. And then, by the way, can we like quick detour on Shams?
Sure.
All right. So while the draft was going on, he is, by the way, employed by FanDuel, and this is why this caught my attention.
Yep.
While the draft was going on, the odds for the second pick were swinging all over the place. And
not while the draft was going on. In the days
like heading
into
into the draft. Yeah, I guess while the draft was going on, it for the vast majority of the draft, those guys have already been taken.
Did you see somebody?
So fair point.
I think it was like minus 20,000 for Wembanyama to be picked first. Somebody bet like 60 grand to win $300 on Wemby going first.
So here's my thing: if you have the money to drop 60 grand on something like that, why aren't you dropping like 100 grand or $1 million or whatever that returns?
Because it's a joke, right? For the joke.
Yeah.
Well, having 60 grand to drop is a lot different than having a million to drop.
I
But
guess most
for
of
the
these
joke
books
of it,
have,
because if you have 60 grand to drop on that, you don't
yeah,
care about the $300.
yeah,
So it's just like for the bit, for the joke.
yeah. I'm pretty stoked though. Avery does have $300 worth of donuts that she gets to.
From Wemby going first.
Yeah, yeah. I
That
dropped
was you.
that
That
was actually
unnamed
me.
better was you.
Yeah, that was me. All right. So anyway, in the days leading up to the draft, the odds for the second player taken were kept jumping back and forth between Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller,
Hmm.
and a big reason why that kept on jumping back and forth was because Shams was going out there and saying one way or the other. They kept on saying names that this is who they're looking at. They're looking this way, and then the odds were swinging. People would put money on it, and then they would swing back, and he would say the other thing. And then
No,
finally,
but
like,
it was also Woj, them going back and forth.
yeah. And so Woj, though, is employed by ESPN, which, fine, you do your reporting for ESPN, and you do your reporting from ESPN. That isn't to say that ESPN doesn't have, like, DraftKings money coming in, right? They do have partnerships with those companies, but it's not the same as being in the employ of one of these companies that does directly benefit from people losing money based off of the reports that go out there. So anyway, Shams does all of that. Somebody notices it, tweets it. That goes crazy viral. And and I didn't mean to talk about this today, or otherwise I would have pulled up the tweet. But it goes crazy viral, and we haven't heard from Shams since. FanDuel put out a statement.
We have
They
not.
said that we do not know what Shams is going to report before he reports it. To which I would say, what are you employing him for then?
So here's what I will tell you, and maybe
and
that's true. Maybe
Well,
maybe
let me
that's
just
true.
just really quickly just wrap this up. The only thing I misspoke. I did see a
Yeah, he's
video
been a little
report
bit.
yesterday,
He's been around a little bit.
but he has been nowhere near
Not nice.
as visible as he would typically be, and it made me
Correct.
wonder if FanDuel or his employers have just kind of said, like, hey, let's sit this one out. Let's let the news
Right.
cycle
I mean,
carry
because
on and then get back.
this all of those guys. This is when they
Make their
not
money.
make their money so much, but make their names. Right. This is
Yeah.
how you become a titan in the news breaking in the NBA industry. This is time. This is the time.
Oh,
the
I
free
forgot.
agency.
I also have Fisher on my
Yeah,
notification.
as you should.
Yeah.
So the point I was going to make is that may be true about what FanDuel said. We don't know what he's going to tweet before he tweets it. That may be true. And maybe it is true because they're not a news entity, right? But
Yeah.
every news entity, I know this to be true. ESPN, Fox Sports, CBS Sports, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They have before any of their talent
Journalistic
is allowed
standards.
before any of their talent is allowed to break anything, they have to run it by their news desk first.
I mean, I've done this. So with Vox, for example, I had it. It was made known to me, and I've told some of this story before, but it was made known to me that the Lakers were beefing up their analytics department. And I'm not going to go into the sourcing on how I knew that because that's funny.
You never
Maybe
reveal
when
your
I'm like
source.
80 years old, it'll be because it is a funny story. And I'm no longer in the industry. But anyway, I'm not going to burn a source over it. But what I will say though is that, like, I was told about it by multiple people, had it confirmed and all of that stuff. Told Harrison, hey, this is something that I'm confident in my ability to report. He then spoke to Seth, who was his boss, and I had to tell both of those guys. I had to go into a meeting with both of those guys to tell them what my sourcing was, why this was applicable information, why it was worth reporting, blah, blah, blah. We then had to reach out to the Lakers to ask them for comment on it. At which point they said, who the fuck is Fred Irwin or Anthony Irwin, whatever his name is? Why does he have this information? And we were just like, he just does. So do you want to comment on it or not? And they were really angry about it, but we just moved on. And it was a story that put them in a positive light. They were beefing up their analytics department. That was something that fans really wanted at the time, and still prioritize. But anyway, to your point, like that was a multi-step thing to report a very small story, that involves the subject itself. And like this is why journalists get up in arms at the way that like the Schefters, the Wojs, the Shams of the world operate, because a lot of those steps are now being skipped. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, the point is that it's possible that FanDuel is telling the truth as it relates to Shams, but every other house,
if so, it's not a great look either.
every other shop, every other house. I mean, again, I made the distinction that FanDuel is not like a news organization, but is Shams' its Bleacher Report also, right? I think he's Bleacher Report and the Athletic, right? No, not the Bleacher Report, the Athletic. So the Athletic certainly, he has people that he has to talk to at the Athletic before he just sends something out there, especially since the Athletic is now the New York Times. Like so maybe that's true with FanDuel, but yeah, there were some wild swings in the 36 hours up to the draft, who the odds on the second pick. Yes.
Yeah. And now he is a lot quieter than he typically is. And I'm kind of
especially
wondering,
this time of year.
Yeah. And I'm also kind of wondering if that might signal, like, if we're going to start, because like there were reports last year about Schefter that he was, now look,
he was letting the subject of some of his articles
redline his articles,
editing power.
Yeah. And like that is very different. Like when I was at Vox, reached out to the Lakers for comment, we weren't like, no, we're not. I wasn't changing my story based off of what they were telling me to say there. That's very different than like handing your story, giving them the edited version of the story, already edited, telling them, here's your red marker, Mr. Editor. I think he even called Dan Snyder. And then changing the story based off of what the subject wants it known about him out there publicly. Potentially on some really important shit, because we now know how Dan Snyder was operating, by the way. But anyway, can
we talk about this for the rest of the show? And
and then and I know like people like, journalism is boring and all of that stuff, and I get it or whatever, but like it is, I do kind of wonder if this is one of those inflection points where more people are made known because they are losing money over it, how some of the sausage is made, and if we are going to start to regulate the making of said sausage.
This is going to be our worst show ever.
Maybe.
We have spent it talking about journalistic standards and integrity and CBA minutia. This is going to
I know. And look, like this is where I probably need a producer to yank me away from some of this stuff, but like I don't know. I try to like focus on stuff that I think people should be focusing a little bit more on. And by the way, like it's June 29th. Tomorrow is June, today at some point we're going to get word on Mo Bamba and Malik Beasley.
Okay,
and I think
here's what I will say about that.
Okay.
I was like, here's what I'll say about that. And then had to be like, wait a second.
You stepped out onto the cliff. You're like, that's a real long fall.
That looks, how high are we?
You sure this is okay?
Okay, so here's what I will say is I think...
Do you like jumping off high stuff into water?
That's white people stuff. That's white people shit. Why? What is like, what's fun about that? No. There's so many things that could go wrong. No, absolutely
I flip
not.
Off of that stuff. I have pictures of me like upside down 15 feet over the water.
That's awful. Fun. Why? No. And first of all, nobody should be going anywhere near water. Did we learn anything from the last week or so? We ain't supposed to be in the ocean like that. For me, now,
that was in fairness, that was Tahoe.
Rivers, like creeks, lakes, ponds.
There was nothing in Lake Tahoe.
I'm not taking a bath. Like, no bodies of water. I'm not dipping a toe in.
The name of the show is going to be Hygiene, White People Stuff, per Aaron.
No, hygiene is not white people stuff, unfortunately. You can go to Twitter, it'll tell you that. I bathe once a week. You do what?
I remember one time.
The people that
do you wash your calves?
Yeah, don't. They just let the water run over you. That's hygiene is not white people stuff.
All right, so
Okay, so
right.
here's what I okay, so now here's what I will say. And I have to put it this way, but I think that right, it seems like whatever happens, a decision has been made, right? Like, of course, something if you're deciding something or not deciding something, you are making a decision. But I think it is going to be very instructive about the Lakers' path,
Yeah.
whatever you hear today, I think is absolutely a fork in the road.
Yeah.
And I think both paths can have benefits. I think both paths are good paths. But I think if the Lakers decide to just let a couple guys go for nothing, it's because it's not nothing. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that gets back to what was going to be the subject matter of this show, 35 minutes in. So, the two paths forward here, and I wrote about this for Substack, which please do subscribe. But I wrote that the one path and the path that has been signaled most to this point, publicly and privately by the Lakers, is mostly running it back, right? Resigning Reeves and resigning Rui is probably is priority number 1 and 2 respectively right now, and both things are expected to be taken care of.
Yes, but I would also say that it also matters what Austin's cap hold is, right? Because it gives you more flexibility.
Yeah, the timing of it is different.
The timing of it matters too. But go ahead.
I'm more just kind of talking about like the boxes that need to be checked. When they get checked and stuff like that, we can talk about later. But the boxes that have to be checked, I think right now in terms of like not order of when they need to be done, but order of priority.
Okay.
Re-signing Austin Reeves is priority number 1.
Okay.
Bringing back Rui Hachimura is priority number 2.
Okay.
There's a gap.
Okay. You got tears going, huh? All right.
Yeah. Bringing back D'Angelo Russell.
I'm gonna sit this. I'm just gonna sit this out and just listen. But I am interested in what
I think.
Yeah, no, I am interested in
what I'll say. What I'm saying right now is like
because I think I don't
how I would
say
go
you're
about
the voice of the fans, but I think you have. I mean, because you know more than most fans, but it is interesting to me to hear what a fan's priorities are. That's interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
So continue, please.
So Reeves, Rui, Gap, Russell.
Okay.
And the reason I would say Russell needs to be done sooner rather than later is because his cap hold is huge because of what he was on last year. And the number that he's brought back on is going to be significantly lower than that. You know, is the range that I'm hearing right now is like 18, as low as like 15, which I think is crazy. I don't think he's coming back at 15. And as high as like 22 and a half or so. I have him somewhere in the middle at like 20 with a player option on the second half, or the team option on the second.
I'm going to say nothing more than this, but
I hope not. We still have a lot of show to do.
It kind of feels like and you and I have talked about this on the show Succession. The Lakers and D'Lo kind of feel like was it one of the last scenes? I think it was one of the last scenes.
Shiv and Tom.
Yeah, they're in like the back of the limo, like sort of holding hands, right?
Yeah.
Like both
the most cold embrace that has ever existed.
That's that. I mean, yeah, there you go. Because it kind of felt like it. No, I can't say that. So yes, that is my analogy.
Again, I keep calling him. He's.
What are you saying? Like day old pizza or something?
Yeah, he's like not day old. Day old is fine. Like you don't even worry about. You throw day old pizza back in the air fryer, it's still delightful. But like, I'm talking about like 5-day old pizza in the fridge.
What?
I'm listen to me.
White people shit again. 5-day old pizza. Why is that still in your fridge?
It's in the refrigerator.
Why is it still in your 5-day old pizza? Why is that still in your fridge?
Because leftover pizza is delightful. Anyway.
Yeah, it is. Day 1 or 2.
But this is all right. I'm not saying that I look forward to eating 5-day old pizza. This is why it's perfect.
Can't even be day old pizza or 2-day old pizza.
No, because
he has to be 5-day old pizza that probably shouldn't still be in your fridge.
You said it out loud, right?
That's your analogy. That's what I'm saying.
He's got to
be we got to bump him up.
All right, so he's 3-day-old pizza. He's on that borderline of like, I'm not sure I should eat this. I'm not sure I should bring him back at that number.
My mic. Go ahead. Just go on a rant. I'm muting my mic. I need more Hennessy.
So, all right. So Reeves, Rui, Gap, Russell. The decisions on Bamba and Beasley need to be made, and that's going to happen today. Either the decision to do something or to push it back. The decisions have been
made, but they have to be executed or not executed today. This is not like going down to the wire. What are we going to? What is the what's that meme with like the sweaty superhero?
Yeah, but usually it's like those are like obvious options, right? You know, there's like a super obvious option in one, and then the finger is like floating over the dumb option, and this person's sweating over what to do. But anyway, so
I laughed at one this morning that I don't feel good about laughing at. But go ahead. I
think I know which one.
About the perfect game yesterday.
Yeah. Yep, not
no
bringing
hitter.
That up on the show.
Yeah. about which was weird because a no hitter is not a perfect game. But yes, I didn't feel good about laughing about that one, but I did. There's a little chuckle.
So, NBA star Kyrie Irving intends to meet with the Phoenix Suns when free agency period begins on June 30th. Sources tell TNT and Bleacher Report.
My guy Chris Haynes.
That is Chris Haynes. I don't even know what about.
And there's the question, right? Why would he meet with them in free agency? They don't have any cap space.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what they have?
DeAndre Ayton.
There you go.
Yep. So
although it would take a lot more than that because they are already over the apron.
Yeah.
So if they receive Kyrie in a sign and trade, no, that won't work. That won't work. They would have to clear a bunch more money to be able to take him in a sign and trade. Because they're already they have. Yes.
Well, I guess if you take into account roster, like the costs of roster spots, right? Open roster spots cost money on your cap until they're filled.
Those four guys make. I'll look, but those four guys make.
I think 160 something.
How about a lot?
Yeah.
So and it's the apron is 172. Oh, it's one.
Or no, 165.
Right? 165. Yeah. I was like, wait a second.
The first one that teams are hard capped on if they use the non-taxpayer or the biannual.
So they currently
sign and trade somebody.
I'm sure they're over. They have to be over already. They currently have. They are currently at 175. That's not going to work.
With players needing to be.
That's not going to work. That's not going to work.
Yeah. It also is pretty clearly a leverage play from Kyrie's camp.
A leverage for what? Leverage how? What, he's going to go?
I never said his camp was.
He's going to go to Phoenix for the minimum. Go for it.
Have you seen the shit that his camp has leaked? He was going to take the mid-level with the Lakers.
No, he wasn't.
That's what I'm saying. Is it like they keep on leaking all this dumb shit because like they aren't very good at this?
You guys bought that shit last year too. I'm like,
whoa. This is where I do the Phil, Uncle Phil. We?
All right, fine.
I didn't buy shit.
Kyrie's coming. No, he's not. He's not. You think he's giving up $30 million? Sure.
Did you listen to the show that I did with Dan? Earlier this week, Wiki, because I asked him like, what was the most nonsensical story that sources tried to like slip by him, and he used that.
I listened to you. I listened to Timph yesterday.
We've had some good shows this week. Yeah. I really hope people are checking that out. But anyway, so back to what we're talking about here. From there, like after that, the priorities just kind of like are what they are, right? It's just kind of filling out the roster, finding out what they can do with Lonnie Walker, who, according to Jovan, is more on the table than I thought he would be to this point. And like regarding Lonnie, what I will say about that is, if you look at how dry the rest of the market is, he seems like the kind of player who might get squeezed out and might wind up taking the minimal raise that the Lakers can give him. So instead of making 7 that he made last year, he would be making 7.8 or something like that this year.
You know what's interesting about that? The guys that signed mid-levels, taxpayer mid-levels last year did themselves a favor because the tax mid-level is down to 5 this year. Yeah. All of the other exceptions have gone up, but that one has gone down significantly. So basing your contract, so he it's not like he can go leave and then just get the mid-level again. I mean, he can, but that's going to cost him some money. So those kind of guys, the guys that signed the taxpayer mid-level last year, are in good shape.
And this is why it really matters what number Russell is brought back at and what number Rui is brought back at. Because, like, again, Austin, we pretty much know is going to be making $12 million next year. I think
we don't.
If you really want to get down to the sense of it's like 12.4.
It doesn't matter. We don't pretty much know. We know.
Yeah.
No matter what team Austin is on, he is going to make what he's going to make. It doesn't matter.
And again,
and he will be a Laker.
All indications is that team is going to be the Lakers.
I'm not going to tell you all indications. I'm going to tell you he's going to be a Laker.
Well, I've been telling you this for weeks. About that shit. I know. Well, again, so have I. In part because anyway. So
we basically know. We actually know what Austin is going to make.
I do have to be careful.
And the Lakers do not have the Lakers.
And I'm not even employed by FanDuel, and I'm more careful about this stuff. But anyway,
the Lakers do not have the cap space to
smooth it.
If he signs an offer sheet elsewhere. So for the Lakers, it will be whatever it is, 12-2, I think is what it is. But
so, but the number on Rui matters. The number on Russell matters. And by the way, the number on Malik Beasley could really matter if they hope to bring Lonnie Walker back. And if they don't pick up Malik Beasley's option, they could bring Beasley back at like $5 million and save $10 million or $11.5 million. That could be used on Lonnie. That could be used on the mini mid-level. That could be used on, that at this point looks like it's going to Dennis Schroeder.
Here's the order of operations for Malik. Theoretically, if his option is not picked up and he does want to come back at a different number, theoretically, the order of operation there does matter. It probably won't matter, but it could matter because you can take advantage of the bird rights. So you can pay him whatever at the end. You have to agree to it, obviously, but when he actually signs it, can be way after everything else is done.
And that's because the Lakers are operating over the cap.
It's probably not going to matter, but there's a small chance it could matter theoretically. If the Lakers decide to go the cap space route, it matters. Then it matters.
Oh yeah. Then it matters if they're talking about cap space. But I don't.
No, if you're over the cap, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I think the order of operations are going to be operating.
The money matters, but the order of operations doesn't matter.
I think the Lakers are going to be operating over the cap.
I would say that's probably likely.
Yeah, that's what I've been told all along, and that's what running it back looks like, is operating over the cap. In which case, cap holds don't matter as much. So yeah, I think and by the time we
go ahead. No, you're right.
No, go for it.
No, you're right. It doesn't. No, you're right. Like yeah, okay, you're right. Yes, for the Lakers, for this iteration of the Lakers, it doesn't matter. But there is a world in which it can matter, even if you're over, because if you're into the second apron, like the Warriors, right? The Warriors don't have their taxpayer mid-level because
they're in the second apron right now.
Been phased in, yes. So it doesn't matter for the Lakers in this case, but it could matter.
Now, the other path that the Lakers could go down, and this is where stuff like that does start to matter, is if they go the cap space route, where they, in order to have meaningful cap space, you renounce everybody, basically, except for Reeves. whose cap hold is small enough that you could still have meaningful cap space beyond him. But you renounce Rui, you renounce Russell, you renounce Bamba, you don't pick up Beasley's option. You basically clear the books, and if they do that, they can have upwards of like 30-ish million
35,
in.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a path with Rui that without you don't renounce Rui, and it's 17-ish.
Yeah. And that's if you sign him quickly. Like if you like the first thing that you do essentially is
no, you don't have to, because it's his cap hold is that you can
right.
keep his cap
It's
hold.
it's like 15 mil, right?
You can keep his cap hold.
And and so that is a path that the Lakers could go down. Again, from everything that I've heard, that is not, and not just what I've heard, by the way, but like what Rob Pelinka has said publicly, is that they are more interested in a kind of smoother path forward, more based on continuity, and wiping your books clean is not very heavy on continuity.
No, it is not.
The middle ground there, the third path that like kind of splits the difference between those two things, is what we're talking about when we mentioned Bruce Brown earlier, right? Where we're talking about re-signing Rui, obviously re-signing Reeves, but that might happen a little late. A little later because of cap holds and stuff like that. And you know,
I mean, if the Lakers are,
yeah, I guess you're over it anyway.
If you're over the cap consistently, if you never dip under and then come back up, if you're over the cap consistently, it doesn't matter. That the fact that the delta between his whatever 2 million cap hold and whatever Austin is going to get, well, 12 million in the first year.
Yeah.
That $10 million only matters if you're under the cap.
Yeah.
If you're over the cap, it doesn't matter.
So the in this scenario, in order to open up the entire non-taxpayer mid-level, you are renouncing Bamba, you are not picking up Malik Beasley's number, and probably not bringing him back at all at any number. Probably saying goodbye to Lonnie Walker in that scenario as well, and you're probably using your biannual on Schroeder in that scenario, while you use the non-taxpayer mid-level on whatever free agent it is that the Lakers want. And the reason that I mentioned all of that, 50-something minutes into this thing, the reason that I mentioned all of that is to say that access to that type of free agent, in this case Bruce Brown, is the one that has been most, closely associated with the Lakers. I don't think he is good enough to forego all of the other options that go out the door by choosing this path, right? You'd no longer have the expiring contracts of Malik Beasley and Mo Bamba, who are like on the peripheries of your rotation. Like the thing that the Lakers have run into trouble the last couple of years in trying to build out their roster beyond LeBron and beyond Russ, is that if they were to make moves, they were going to have to move like rotation players. Taylor Horton-Tucker was a rotation player when they were trying to move his contract. And so any trade that you have go out then has to start with making up for what you're sending out the door, right, talent-wise, while also, being mathematically meaningful enough to match there. And, the nice thing that I like about Bamba and Beasley is neither of those guys did anything in the playoffs last year. So if you send out their contracts, which can add up to about $26.5 million, which can net you like a $32 million player, that player is just profit talent-wise compared to what the Lakers had in the playoffs last year. And that to me is a much higher upside play than bringing in a Bruce Brown right now and saying goodbye to those guys. What do you think about that stance?
I'm not going to comment on. I think unnamed cognac is delicious. That's what I think about that stance. Look, everybody's going to have. You laid out the possible pathways pretty effectively, and I said this last year. I think it was when we were doing the hook. That, and even last offseason, a year ago or so, is that. As it related to Russ and what it would take to get off of him, what you would get back, and all of that, that different people are going to have different standards on, what is good enough. and not naming any player specifically, but different people are going to have different standards on which player would be worth it at the theoretical non-taxpayer mid-level to be willing to part with all of the optionality that you would get by just straight running it back. So I think different people could have a different standard, and that's reasonable. But I think you did a good job of laying out the different paths. And
the coffee kicked in while I was talking. It was
wild. We will have a. I think we will have a decent. Hold on, sorry. I think we will have a decent idea of which fork in the road the Lakers. And here's the other thing. It is possible, like, you can only know what you can know, and so it is. I think two things. I think it will have a pretty good idea of which of the path that you so eloquently laid out, thanks to the coffee, the Lakers are going to take here in the next few hours. But it is also possible, like, people can change their mind. You can get bad information, right? You can only know what you can know, and you can only know something to, X percentage certainty. So it is possible that you can make what you think is the best decision because you have some future plans and it doesn't work out. That is a possible thing too. So, but I think we will have a pretty good idea here in the next couple hours which path the Lakers are at least attempting to take. Let's say that.
All right, so I'll talk to you in a couple hours.
Sure. But like you have any restrictions on texting me?
I think that is a good place to kind of.
No, go ahead. Come on.
The last kind of thing that I wanted to talk about here, and again, it's I'm trying to speak in as much generality that we can continue to have a conversation as possible. Is that generally speaking, the higher your books sit at, the higher the margin for error sits at, right? So, again,
what do you mean? Maybe the coffee didn't kicked back out. What do you mean?
Well, I'm pulling up what I wrote last night. So
that was not eloquently stated.
All right. So in the Bruce Brown scenario, right, or the non-taxpayer,
we're back mentioning.
All right, in the NTMLE, the big mid-level scenario here, right?
Yep.
I said there's good news, there's bad news, and then there's terrifying. There's a terrifying outcome here, right? And the terrifying outcome here is that you do say goodbye to Bamba and Beasley, and you walk away with either not the player that you thought you were going to be able to get at that number, or you walk away with basically nobody, right? And I don't think the Lakers would strike out altogether, but it would be a less inspiring name that doesn't raise your ceiling to a point where it was worth it to say goodbye to Beasley and Bamba. Whereas if you go the Beasley and Bamba as trade pieces route, yeah, you say goodbye to the Bruce Browns of the world and that type of, and again, this free agent crop isn't so inspiring that I'm like, no, what am I gonna do without Dante DiVincenzo?
Shake your fist.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna like lose sleep over not having access to that kind of player.
Man shakes fist at Cloud.
Yeah, so like there is no like terrifying outcome to the path forward with Beasley and Bamba in tow. There is, however, a terrifying outcome to saying goodbye to those people and foregoing. Like, I would be pretty bummed if the Lakers, strike out per se, and we can find a better term for it if you want, on the NTMLE target, and then also don't have access to the $30 million player that the Lakers could turn Beasley and Bamba into. And a $30 million player, those are impact guys, typically. Right? Those guys, like, so for example, Kuz is looking for a contract in the range of $30 million. That guy, if you take off Beasley and Bamba off of last year's roster and you put Kuz on the roster in that Denver series, that series goes very differently. Very differently. And that's why, like, to me, the most logical path forward, even if it's the more expensive path forward, and This is where, you know, owners have different levels of what they're comfortable spending under different circumstances. And for me, though, as it isn't my money, I still think the path forward that I am most comfortable with is the higher upside play of keeping Bamba and Beasley and foregoing whatever type of free agent that you'd be able to get at the non-taxpayer and at the biannual. What do you think of that general stance?
Yeah, I mean, look, every path, and this is why it's hard. All of this is hard, right? And this is why GMs don't sleep very much.
Well
This is why,
well
why I
compensated.
don't sleep very much, and why GMs are well compensated. Me, on the other hand, whatever. But, and as I said earlier, you know, part of it is you can only work with the best information you have. And I always say to you guys and to everybody listening that the NBA is a people business. Every business is a people business. We don't think of the NBA in that way, but it is, right? Who can you trust? What information do you have? How trustworthy is it? Excuse me. So all of these roads are fraught, perilous. But again, and a lot of it is, and you just mentioned it with owners about, you know, their tolerance for spending, and that threshold is different for everyone. It's also an organization, an owner, a GM's like risk tolerance that plays a big factor in it also. So, how much fun is this? I mean, it's not fun for me, but how much fun? How much?
This is my favorite time of the year. This is like I'm going to be completely honest. This is the kind of stuff that I do really love is, you know, throwing together scenarios, throwing together paths forward, and figuring out which path forward I'm most interested in, right? And this is also, by the way, how Rob Pelinka operates, right? He is very much a planner. He throws together all of these scenarios. He throws together all of, you know, upside and downside to various decisions and all of that. And at the end of it, he makes a decision based off of all of the intel that he gets from various people throughout the organization on the upsides and downsides of various players and various guys that they have on their roster. One group that I think he's really going to be working with or has really worked with to this point is probably the player development aspect of the coaching, because he's probably been in close contact with them, talking to Phil Handy, talking to everybody over there.
Oh, I mean, Phil is the best there is, yeah.
What do you think you can turn Mo Bamba into? What do you think you can turn Malik Beasley into? Is it worth the $26.5 million that would sit on our books to keep them here?
By the way, on that, to as a part of that, I think there's a decent
watching you just you get so excited because you're like, I have a point to make. He's like, I got to be careful on how I make the point.
I just finished off. I was basically licking the bottom of my brandy goblet.
Yeah, I didn't know you could strain glass. That was wild.
just wring it out for the last drop. Yeah. I think there's a pretty good chance that Colin Castleton is.
I've been calling this.
Plays.
I've been calling this.
I think there's a decent chance that he plays this year. The other, so I have a question for you. Maybe I'm crowdsourcing this. This is which.
Yeah.
So,
Canary in
what
the
is what is your most desired? No, not most desired. Give me your Beasley thing. Give me your Beasley take. Separate him from Mo for a second. Give me your Beasley take. Not take. And not most desired. Like, what would you like to have happen? I guess.
Man,
I was talking about.
I don't want to lose him for nothing. That's
okay.
my
I was talking about the reason
desirable.
I'm saying this is because yes, I was talking about this yesterday with an agent. But go ahead.
I don't want to lose him for nothing because I still think he's better than he showed himself to be in the playoffs. Significantly better, I think, than he showed himself to be in the playoffs. And it's been interesting to see the reaction to that playoffs. you know, in the weeks afterward, where people that I talked to were just like, yeah, just let him walk. He, you know, he not only is
the
he
same
not
thing
as
about D'Lo. It's silly.
yeah, I don't get it, but like, I don't think he's a $16.5 million player, but I also don't think he's a veteran minimum type player either. And so ideally, and this is ideally, I bring him back at 16.5 because I think him and Bamba combining for that number is a really valuable trade asset moving forward. But if the trade market continues the way that it has to this point, where teams are really reluctant to part with anybody, then I would bring him back at like $6 million next year and save $10 million off of my books right off the bat.
Okay.
Tell you what,
I mean that is basically the. Okay, so
this clip is really high.
This was just me talking to people. This was not like a Lakers specific. I have information kind of thing, or at least if I do, I'm not suggesting that this. But I think it's an interesting question about whether you would rather have, as you mentioned, you know, him on the 1 year 16.5 that he's scheduled to get, or if you would rather more years for less money, right? Yeah. I mean, like, let's call it 16.5 for 2 years. Which do you prefer? And that seems very counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I again, I'm looking at it. It's a combination of him, the player, and him, the trade asset.
Answer the question.
I think I would still rather have him at the 16. I'm over the cap anyway, you know. And now look, if having him at that number cost me Lonnie, right? If the Lakers really think they have a chance at being able to keep Lonnie, and that depends on whether or not they have Beasley at a lower number, then absolutely, I would rather, because that gives me the upside. He can still be moved like a player. You know, you could still move.
But yes, but what I suspect, and I've said this for a couple of weeks right after the Beal trade on the show, what I suspect Phoenix is going to do is going to overpay people on shorter term deals so that they can move them for more. Yeah. So I don't know.
This is a version of that.
Yeah. Then there's the calculation of like, if this is all theoretical, but if keeping him 1 year at the number it is currently, as opposed to breaking it up into a couple years, if that costs you Lonnie, okay, that hurts, right? But
it potentially nets you somebody more impactful than Lonnie.
Yeah, these are all the calculations that need to be made at all times. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to end this thing here because I do think we're kind of on the verge of some news. So if we get some news, the plan is for me to go immediately on here and at least record a lowdown. And depending on the news and depending on what it all looks like and stuff, the plan also is to have somebody on here tomorrow to kind of sum this up and send us into free agency weekend, which is such a dick move that July 1st is on a Saturday.
Are we blaming the NBA for this?
It's supposed to be a freaking long weekend.
The dick move of all dick moves was KD announcing he was going to the Warriors the morning of July 4th. And so everybody was like, well, fuck, what?
Yeah.
This is like a seismic shift in the NBA, and now everybody has to work on the 4th? Fuck you.
I really wish they would push the season back a week, let it end a week later, let the draft take place a week later, and have the moratorium end on July 5th. Like, I can work hungover. I don't want to work on July 4th.
What are you barbecuing? You got plans? What are you barbecuing?
Carne asada.
Attaboy.
Nothing more American.
Very American.
Look,
as American as Cinco de Mayo, by the way. Just not a
that's
thing
probably
either.
More American. It's more of an American thing than. But anyway, my neighbors in this cul-de-sac that I live in, every year they ask me, "Hey, are you making carne? Please make carne."
Do you have the secret ingredient for the carne asada?
I go to the meat shop
You get
where
it
they are
already
much-
marinated.
Oh yeah, dude.
What do
It
you
is
mean?
so good.
So why do they ask you? They can just go get it themselves. You don't
Oh,
have
because
anything.
I cook it better than they do.
All right,
Like,
fine.
you
You don't
know,
have anything proprietary.
the my ability to cook it
Your
is
skill on the
proprietary.
grill. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Fair enough.
Grill skill. All right. Like I said, that is going to do it for this episode of the Lakers Lounge. We will have more emergency episodes of the Lakers Lounge, starting with the news of what the Lakers plan to do with Beasley and with Bamba, because like Aaron said, that is going to dictate the paths forward that they take. So
Like,
until then,
by the way, how
and then-
much fun is it, Kyrie? I'm going back to this. Kyrie saying
he's such an
I'm going to Phoenix, using Phoenix as leverage.
he's such a like there his camp is just stuffed with morons. It's just unbelievable.
Using Phoenix as leverage.
It's
How
just
many-
so like
how many guys do they have that need the ball?
it's just look. I
Can they
don't.
please play Kyrie and Beal and Booker and KD together?
Not a single stop all year. Defense is all vibes.
By the way, go get another ball dominant guard too, and just play.
Yeah.
You play all.
Acquire
of them
Jordan
together.
Poole. Jordan Poole, Kyrie Irving.
Book, Beal and KD.
Yeah.
They will score 200 a night and will give up 280.
215. Thank you very much, Aaron, for hopping on here and dealing with our stuff. I say it all the time, and I truly, legitimately mean it, that having access to somebody with the intel and with the insight that Aaron does, who is also willing to put up with my bullshit, is a incredible asset to Lakers fans out there. So thank you for dealing with that stuff, and I'll talk to you in a couple hours.
My pleasure, brother.